Welcome to the Regular Joe's podcast. I'm Dave Pisani.
I'm Barry Kay.
I'm Todd Pleasant.
And I'm Brian Mix.
Yeah, we're all almost here.
Back again.
3 weeks in a row with Brian.
In a while. He's traveling the four corners of the earth, searching for toys, no doubt. So we are back from Wonderfest. If you didn't listen to last week's show, listen to last week's show. We had a good time. Wonderfest is a good time. Nice small convention, very focused feel. You don't get that much anymore. I feel like, and we've talked about it, you got that in like the old Joe shows, pre the 3 3/4 people infiltrating. Nice narrow focus. But it's funny. I'm thinking the other day I was thinking, I'm like, there's so much stuff at this con. There's all these sort of more obscure things I'm into, Forbidden Planet and Universal Monsters and stuff like that. That there's nowhere else. I don't know if there's anywhere else to get their hands on that kind of stuff.
I knew that Brian and I would have a great time. I was glad that you guys had a great time and that you didn't get bored.
Yeah, it was terrific. It was just, it was, as Dave said, though, it was interesting to see the niches that people just went crazy with. And like I said, I've literally never in my life seen that much Space 1999 in one place.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not beating up Star Wars, but it's very pre-Star Wars focused.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
There were 3 or 4 entries from Fantastic Voyage.
Right. But there's also, the Star Trek stuff is the whole range of the series.
Yeah.
The whole range of the franchise. So it's not like people are stuck in the 60s. It's just different interests. So
here's an interesting question. What franchise, not even franchise, what, I'll call it franchise, not a franchise, a thing, wasn't represented that should be fitting into that time frame? Brian should know this. It just popped in my head.
Okay, so
wasn't represented. It should be represented.
And I don't know what there would be to represent.
Planet of the Apes?
That's another one. There really there wasn't much if any Planet of the Apes.
There were a couple of guys selling 2X size model kits.
Yes, that's true. I did see
they're
that.
2X sized. Yeah.
I did see it. No Logan's Run. I don't know what you'd do, but
other than the Jessica 6.
There was a Jessica.
Oh, there was. Oh, yeah.
You know what, Dave?
Yep.
Next year, I'm bringing a Logan's Run model.
I was going to say, Brian, you need to make a quarter scale box.
I'm going to bring a Logan's Run model.
Why stop at quarter scales?
I know what it is. I'll tell you off the air. I know what I'm bringing.
So the other thing is, okay, the thing that the props category that you entered, okay, could you enter any prop in that you made?
Yes,
I was wondering about that
because that's Dave's. That should be Dave's category right there. You should be thinking about what you want to make.
And there were like 5 entries, so it's a good...
I know.
Never mind.
I have thought about that.
The modeling where you got 10 years to catch up paint wise with most of these people, but you created some amazing, often obscure props. You should be in that category next year.
And
no, that's the thing.
Earth 2 set of props would be interesting. To see how many, what 3 people recognize it.
But there's if you made I've made props. You've seen some of them. I've made them out of metal and wood. Can that be entered? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, why not?
Sure.
I don't think that the materials matter. Brian's space pod wasn't made out of styrene.
But that wasn't a prop. That was a model.
Yeah, but still.
I don't know what.
I think there was plenty of plastic on that Ghostbusters pack.
That's true.
Not all metal.
You're the only prop entry. Your Star Trek exploration set that
was model themed.
It was model themed.
Yeah. But, the Han Solo blaster won that category.
Yeah, and that was
it metal? I don't even know.
Yeah.
It could have been metal. It could also have been, cast.
Looking at it
and painted metal.
No, I think they tracked down all the pieces, and because I was looking at the scope, it's a metal scope.
Okay.
I think they tracked down all the pieces and basically reconstructed that and then weathered it. I think that's built. I think that's built on a Den X Mauser, and so
I got like 6. I may enter 6 things next year because I've got stuff made, but
the Bat Shield, Bat Shield should be there.
But that's the thing is that there's no requirement that it's something you made within the last 12 months either.
Nope.
So.
I did paint that Bat Shield.
If you bring the Batman armory that you've built over the years between the Bat Shark repellent, just lay it all out on the table, that'd be pretty amazing.
Brian, I may challenge myself to finish the thing from the movie we were talking about that I won't name here.
Oh, yeah.
If I push myself to finish it in a year, I probably could. I will need your help with some of it.
I know what you're talking about. That would be cool.
Yeah. Talking about an electronic device?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is just us talking ourselves.
It is. I came back and I went back looking at the models that I've built, and I was evaluating my quality of work against what we had seen. And I think there's definitely stuff in that room that my work is probably as good as or better. And there's definitely stuff in that room that blows my stuff away. But I felt better about myself at looking at the work I've done and said, well, some of what I've got on my shelves.
That's what I've been saying for years, Barry. You should be in that contest. Your stuff is just as good as theirs.
So it inspired me to want to do that for next year.
Yeah, you should definitely bring a couple that you've done and maybe plan a couple to be done for then.
You get 2 models per entry fee, so you could list at least 2. Same price as well.
It would require us driving there though, because there's no way. Most of what I'm going to build would be too fragile to ship or to carry on. But
we could build a road case. All right, that's
something sturdy. Yeah, maybe.
This is after show.
We'll talk
stuff,
about that.
But anyway, so we all had a
that.
great time at Wonderfest. It really got some creative thoughts flowing, and it's again. My point was, it's so nice to see so much of the stuff that really got me into science fiction and everything. Like all that older stuff that isn't. Not that I don't love the newer stuff, but there's so much of
when we go to Comic-Cons, like when we go to even Rhode Island or any of the smaller Comic-Cons we go to, it's predominantly newer stuff, whether it's old properties, but newer products. Like it's Funko Pops and it's, it's not, what we saw there is a whole room full of stuff that feels like it could have been there 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. But
you know
anyway.
what I mean?
If you're into models or old time sci-fi, it's definitely worth going to. So anyway, so today we did last week's episode, which if you didn't listen to, go check it out. We interviewed Marta Kristen from Lost in Space. She was lovely right up until the end. No, it's an inside joke. She was great.
Until she told Dave to F off.
I think we should explain that joke, but go ahead.
No, it's fine. She did. She was joking and I was joking. It's fine.
She was totally joking.
Yeah. We lost it. We lost a priceless piece of audio. That's all I'll say. So
at the show we did interview a friend of Brian's, Daren Dochterman, who is done a lot of stuff. He'll talk about his credits, but he does Brian, why don't you or Barry, why don't you give his
I'll tell you, he's currently working at the Roddenberry Archives, working on the stuff there, which is really exciting. There's a lot to do. And there's a few people working on it, half a dozen people working on it, but it won't be long before there's a full 3D walkthrough of Pick Your Enterprise. You beam onto the ship and you walk through with 3D goggles, and you'll be able to go anywhere in the ship you like. That's the kind of thing they're working on there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, but more on him later. We'll have a whole interview with him. But let's do some quick random, and then we'll get to other stuff. Todd, what do you got?
Okay, so I just got caught up on Doctor Who, and I know you guys have dropped off a while ago. I have been watching. I've been watching the seasons as they end, and interestingly, the most recent Doctor, the current Doctor, whose name I'm going to mangle, Nkuti Gatwa, is now leaving, and they did a regeneration at the end of the show. As I'm watching the last 4 episodes, there's certain things that I'm watching it. And again, this is Doctor Who, so stuff's out of sequence and whatnot. I'm watching it, and there's they like went to extremes to establish certain points and then like backed off from them. And it was like they're setting up something that they're not doing here. And it was really clear. And then I read today there's a child actor in the show. We're talking like 4 or 5 years old. Her mother on her child's social media account basically came out and said, this was not supposed to be his last season, but it took so long to make the season, they couldn't do a third season with other commitments he had. So basically the mother of this child who's on the show laid out everything that they changed because they were all for all the things that they were setting up to do for the following season. It was just really, really bizarre. I don't think you should do that. Anyways, particularly if you want your kid to have the rest of their
career. You want your kid to keep acting.
Keep acting. It's very, very odd. In any case, but the most interesting thing was at the end, they didn't explain it. You guys know that David Tennant is back as a doctor. That at one point when he regenerated, he split into two beings, and David Tennant's doctor is still out there in the universe somewhere. They did in the course of the series explain the bi-generation and why that was occurring, because it happened to somebody else also. But anyway, so he regenerates at the end singly, and he regenerates into Billie Piper. So, 20 years after she first appeared in the show.
Is that a
who is
jumping
Rose
the shark
on
moment?
Yeah, it's so 20 years after she first appeared in the show, she apparently will be back in some form, whether she's going to be ongoing, be the doctor, or whether this is going to be another series of things. But interesting, just really interesting. I mean, the show is good when it's good, but it meanders a lot. And
it sounds like it meanders a lot.
And God, I mean, having Billie Piper in some form and having David Tennant still out there, I feel like they have the tools to kind of bring this back together. They just really need to figure out what they're going to do. So that's
I always liked Rose, so
I like David Tennant, and I love those. That's one of my favorite.
So they're basically
seasons.
both aspects of the Doctor at this point. So like I said, there's potentially some interesting things they could do, and there was some good stuff this season. But it's like I said, it really felt awkward and kind of kind of torn, kind of pulled together at the last minute at the end.
Poor writers. We're going down to this road. Oh, can't do that. Oh, can't do that.
Well, and that's the thing. I tell you what they built up was the reintroduction of a 60-year-old character that people have been asking to see for 60 years, and they set that up, and then they had to like dismiss that plot.
Yeah,
and so it's it's rough, and like I said, hopefully they'll find their footing again at some point. So that's what I got. Barry, what do you got?
Well, according to the Marksman Daily, which we know is the most reputable website on the internet, they're claiming that Avengers Doomsday's budget will be $1 billion.
Oh, come on.
And if that's true, it makes it the most expensive movie ever made. They're saying
if that's true.
No, there's more.
They just spent that on chairs. It was just the chairs.
They're saying $250 million in cast salaries alone. Production costs are going to exceed $600 million, not counting marketing, and that it would need to gross at least $1.5 billion to break even. So I start Googling to see if I can find any information on this, and I found one thing that I thought was really interesting, and it's an interesting way to think about the difference between a million and a billion. So 1 million seconds is 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds is 31.7 years.
Yeah.
When you think about that, you get the sense of what the difference is between millions and billions. But I could find no proof of this on the internet. But what I did look up was, what are the most expensive movies ever made? What's the list? And I was shocked that Star Wars The Force Awakens is officially listed as the most expensive movie ever made. $447 million. Followed by Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, Fast X was $379 million.
Are those adjusted for, adjusted?
Yeah, Fast X was the one where they brought
are not adjusted.
They brought all the living past cast members back, and I bet they wrote a lot of checks. So
if they're going to spend $1 billion on that
adjusted.
movie, I don't believe it, and it's stupid.
Unless they're filming both movies together and counting the cost of both movies, which
that's
could
still too much.
It's still too much, but at least that might help justify that price tag if it's true. But again, this is Marksman Daily.
I've never even heard of it.
Take it. I've never heard of them either. But I just thought it was interesting because it ended up dropping me on this list of most expensive movies ever made. I'll just go through the rest of the top 10 super quick. Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides, Avengers Age of Ultron, Avengers Endgame, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Avatar Way of Water, and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Yeah. A lot of
that was $330 million for that piece of garbage.
The whole thing was effects. There was two people.
It was effects. It was also shot at the wrong time, and they had tons of cost overruns and that kind of stuff. That's got a lot to do with that. But wow,
it's a crazy list, right? And that's only the top 10.
Let me ask you this: how little does the Fantastic Four have to make this summer for them to pull the plug on the Avengers movie?
Nothing. There's nothing.
I think that they're way too committed at this point.
Okay, so if they're
already filming it,
filming it, and they just backed it up 6 months. So if that movie makes $100 million, do they? No. Then
they write it off and they put all their eggs in the Russo brothers' basket and pray.
I don't know,
because they made a totally good movie already that released this year and it didn't do well.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if this ship
Thunderbolts was good,
if that ship has just sailed, and how many billions of dollars are going to take them to figure that out? And that may also be, other than like the kids' movies, what evidence do we have that a Star Wars movie is going to do well at this point? I mean, are these big, heavy laden franchise movies? Are we seeing the death of that stuff?
Could be.
Because
it could be.
You don't need to see all the John Wick movies to see a John Wick movie. But I think the perception is to understand a Marvel movie, you need to be really, really deep into it. And I think it's the same thing with Star Wars.
I also wonder, Endgame and those movies did so well. We were on this ride of where's it all heading. I think everyone got off the train. I don't know that anyone
I think
cares.
so too. That's what I'm saying. I think they.
If these idiots think, well, people are going to come back because Robert Downey Jr. is here, I don't think anyone gives a shit about him one way or another.
If he was back as Iron Man, they might.
I don't even know if they would with that.
There's a huge curiosity thing with that. I don't think that's going to drive that movie to $1 billion.
No.
I mean, it's
and even looking at Mission Impossible that came out a few weeks ago, it's only made $450 million worldwide.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
Is a lot of money, but not when the budget's over $300 million.
People talked about franchise fatigue in regard to particular franchises. I think there's franchise fatigue in regard to franchises. I think people, and tell me if you can think of a movie where I'm wrong on that, but I think people everybody loved Godzilla -1 in part because you didn't have to have seen any Godzilla films to see that. And that's one of the things that everybody raved about it on, critics and viewers alike. But when it gets to be, you need to know, and Barry, you made this point a long time ago, that when you need to do homework before you watch a movie, it takes a lot of the fun out of it. And whether that's true or not, the normals that I talk to, that is the perception. Oh, I'm not going to go.
But then you get something totally original like that Mickey 17 movie, and that bombs also.
Oh, no, I get that. I totally get that. But what I'm saying,
it was good, and it was an original concept.
It's on HBO already.
I talk to people at work, and they say,
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I don't know any of those characters, so I'm not going to see that Marvel movie. And it's like, okay, but it's really good. Yeah, but I don't know those characters. So I think that is the perception, is that you have to know going in, or you're not going to get it.
That's why they're married to IP.
But I think Thunderbolts also had an anchor around its neck because it was kind of built up as the B team, and It is the B Team, but it was a great movie. But people thought of it as the movie of all the rejects.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Anyway,
so well, we will see. But oh God, that's.
I hope it's not true. I hope they're not spending $1 billion.
I hope they can't be that stupid, can they?
So when did that come out, Barry? When did that article come out?
I saw it yesterday. So
we'll know by like Wednesday if Marvel isn't saying, if Disney isn't saying, oh, that's totally false. That, they're not ready to say that's totally false.
Smoke where there's fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fire where there's smoke or whatever.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Brian, what do you got?
Strange New Worlds season 3
premieres July 17th.
But the WGA has leaked that they're signing contracts for season 5. It's been forever, and they're predicting at Comic-Con they're going to announce season 5, but it got leaked by the WGA. It's going to go 5, and probably that'll be it. Dave, what do you got?
Propster is going to have an auction with the G.I. Joe movies.
I saw that.
Like the three, I guess Cobra and Retaliation and the Snake Eyes.
Is half the stuff Daryl's?
No, this is not stuff anyone cares about, I don't think.
So that's the thing. It's like, are people going to be more interested in this than they were the films?
I can't imagine.
I think this is just one of those, we've got a warehouse full of stuff, nobody cares, let's just make something out of it.
And I'm wondering if Hasbro technically auctioned off, didn't they, the Power Rangers stuff?
Yeah, the Power Ranger stuff was all Hasbro.
So they realized, hey, we made a ton of money, let's get rid of this crap too.
Yeah, it's two totally different things.
It's all online.
Very different.
I don't know if there's any. The catalog's not out yet. I don't know if there's anything like, that could be,
those movies were not movies I want to own props from.
Even like a Scarlet. Was it Scarlet? She played Scarlet's tank top, maybe. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think so.
They're giving away, if you sign up, if you register, they're giving away patches. They have all these different colored patches. You know what? I'll throw you $50 for a couple patches.
Somebody's going to want Duke's dog tags, I'm sure, but I can't imagine that there's going to be.
There's someone.
The 3 3/4 inch G.I. Joe collectors might go nuts for this stuff. Who knows?
There's someone out there.
Did not go nuts for the movies. I mean,
they didn't.
I remember those people being the most critical of them. So,
The Rise of Cobra is somebody's favorite movie. I don't know who that person is, but it's true.
We've never met that person.
There's somebody.
Channing Tatum, maybe. Maybe it was his favorite movie.
It's probably not even his.
Until they killed him in the next one.
Yeah, until they killed him in the beginning of the next one.
Oh, The Rock was in. Was The Rock in the second one?
The Rock was in it. Yes, he played Roadblock.
Oh my God!
And let's face it, Bruce Willis was in it too. But
oh yeah, that wasn't horrible. It was not great. It was okay.
Yep. With
I didn't see any of them.
Brian, don't put a lot of effort into correcting.
Yeah, don't. Unless someone.
Now that you say it, I probably should go after something that says Joseph Colton on it. But we'll see. I did name my son after him, after all.
I can't get away from that. There's
very clearly like the movie, Brian. He named his son after a character in the movie.
I know. I named my son after the character well before they made the movie.
So, have you seen that Rock trailer for that whatever wrestling or whatever Ultimate Fighting Championship? Every time I go to the movies, I see it, and I have zero interest in that.
I have not seen that.
Oh, really? It was played a couple times. Anyway, it was awesome, though, despite the G.I. Joe movies not being great. Fanboy Collectibles. Hot Toys, James Bond, Daniel Craig, James Bond up for pre-order. They are now doing James Bond. It used to be Big Chief, but now Hot Toys has the...
and that is one incredible-looking figure.
Yeah, that is an awesome-looking figure. Also, these are cool. Iron Studios... despite what the movie may or may not be, the Iron Studios Fantastic Four from the movie, the Human Torch is awesome. Did you guys see that?
Yeah. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it looks amazing.
I mean, those are statues. That's human.
I wonder do all these bases connect together? I bet you they probably do.
They have to. Always the statues, even going way back when I used to see statues at Midtown Comics. The Fantastic Four had the coolest statues because you'd sometimes get partially or fully clear Invisible Girl and the Human Torch in that translucent, they look awesome. I hope the movie's great because I would get that Human Torch if the movie's good. But plus they got Pops and Sideshow and Hasbro and Kotobukiya and Pops. We didn't see any Pops at Wonderfest, but get them at Fanboy Collectibles. Check those guys out, fanboycollectibles.com. Check them out at their store in Newtown, Connecticut, and tell them the regular Joe sent you. But those statues are very cool. Brian or Barry want to intro this interview with Daren?
Daren is somebody that Brian's known for a while. We all just met him for the first time at Wonderfest. Just give you a sense of some of the stuff he's done, and he does talk about some of this in the interview, but a lot of it we don't get into. Just his credits on Star Trek alone. He worked on the DVD director's cut and 4K restorations of Star Trek the Motion Picture. He's worked on Picard. He's worked on Voyager. He's worked on Star Trek Beyond. He's also worked on The Abyss, Westworld, Passengers, Batman v Superman, Tron Legacy, Iron Man 2, Sky High, a personal favorite of mine, Master and Commander, Seven, and a good Rian Johnson movie, Glass Onion. That's just some of his credits. Plus, he does 4 podcasts, which he talks about in the interview, but he does Inglorious Trexperts, Deck 78, the 430 movie, and Weirded Beardos, which he explains what that is in the interview. So definitely, check out this interview. I not only is he an interesting guy with a great career, and he talks a lot about it, but he does amazing impressions, and you'll hear a few of those in this interview.
The night before, we were talking to him about something, and he went into an Orson Welles doing the commercials. If you haven't heard it, that had us just rolling. It was
in stitches.
It was so good. He doesn't do that here, but we'll have him back to just as Orson Welles, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and if it sounds so you'll hear in about 10 seconds, Brian introduces him, and it sounds like Brian's laughing. And if you want to know why it sounds like Brian's laughing, listen to the end of the podcast all the way past the out music, and you'll hear an outtake, and you'll know why Brian was laughing as he introduced his friend.
Without further ado, Daren Dochterman.
Joining us today is Daren Dochterman. Art director is a fair title for you, or graphic artist for sure.
Concept artist?
Concept artist is usually the case. Sometimes visual effects artist, sometimes visual effects supervisor, sometimes visual effects art director. All these titles have different meanings, but they're all just sort of bunched into a corner as art guy on movies.
And full-time Trexpert.
Full-time Trexpert, yes.
If you were at a party and someone says, hey, what do? You say art guy.
No, I say I work in the movie business.
Yeah.
Or at least I used to.
I was going to say, when it's an attractive woman, you immediately go to I work in the movie business, or yes. A nerdy guy, you say, well, I do do art kind of stuff.
Usually for a nerdy guy, I say I'm a visual effects supervisor.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Exactly.
Look, my mom doesn't even know actually what I do.
Yeah.
She knows I work on some movies that she sees occasionally. She texts me and says, hey, I saw your name on a movie. I say, that's great. Thank you, Mom.
Perfect.
It's all good.
I want to go back. I was reading some Wikipedia. I don't know if you ever read your own Wikipedia or
no, that's dangerous.
Because I'm curious. But so let's go. When did you realize you love movies?
Oh my God, from very early on. I mean, I saw, the first movie that I can remember seeing the whole thing through was Mary Poppins when I was like 3 years old at Radio City Music Hall.
Oh, okay.
In New York. And it was such a fabulous experience. If you've ever seen the movie Radio Days, there's a sequence where they go into Radio City Music Hall, and it was exactly like that.
I used to go see the movie. Yeah. We'd see a movie, and then they'd have the Rockettes after the movie.
I saw Bedknobs and Broomsticks there.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In, 75?
Yeah, it was probably around the same, 74, 75.
But I saw Mary Poppins, and I was enthralled, and later, about a year later, in 74, they had re-released 2001: A Space Odyssey, and my dad took me to that in New York in a theater that had an amazing sound system, and it scared the crap out of me, and I loved it.
Was it the Ziegfeld?
It might have.
The Ziegfeld was the movie theater up until 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah. No, it might have been. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember the experience of watching that movie and then talking to my dad about it afterwards, which was, it's a bonding experience, and I always remember him sort of guiding me along in it and talking about the important things that we'd seen in the movie. But from then on, and I already, by that time, I had been watching Star Trek on TV, and I was a fan of science fiction. I watched The Star Lost in 1973 on TV, and that also scared me. It was the creepy factor of sci-fi, and I was really engaged with that kind of thing very early on. I loved all the Planet of the Apes movies, and I was drawn to that. I knew that I enjoyed that, and the fact that some of it scared me led me to want to find out how.
Yeah.
And that's really a driving force to find out what went into this experience.
Yeah.
When did you read The Making of Star Trek?
Oh, that was probably very shortly around that time.
Okay.
It sounds like an interview with me. So that's exactly.
Well, I mean, the making of the book, The Making of Star Trek, was a turning point for so many people.
Oh my God! Yes,
at that time, we said, "Oh, I want to do that."
Absolutely. But the interesting thing is that in 1971, when I was 4 years old, my dad knew Bob McGrath from Sesame Street, and because my dad worked in the advertising business in New York for 10 years, and he got me onto the Sesame Street sets.
Oh, wow.
And I got to meet Bob. I got to meet Gordon and Mr. Hooper. And Big Bird was there that day, Carol Spinney, who played Big Bird in Oscar. And I got to meet Big Bird in person. And I got to see Oscar. And I got to look behind the trash can. And I saw this hole that they'd cut in the trash can and I thought, even at 4 years old, oh, well, that's where the puppeteer can fit to operate Oscar. So I wasn't scared. I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah.
I was excited
about
I could see
how it was made.
Working.
Yeah.
And that was the most exciting thing. I think that moment alone sort of started me on the path.
Because it's interesting that you say that, because some kids would have been like, oh, my God, it's not real.
Yeah.
It's off. But
when you said you were 4, so you easily could have gone the other way and expected it to be real.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just, how do they make these things?
Yeah. And it was a fascinating sort of glimpse into behind the scenes. And, I saw all these other people working with big cameras and lights and all sorts of setups, and I saw them shooting segments on the show. And that just sort of opened up this whole world of, there are people that do this for a living, and it is a job that I could have.
So you're from New Jersey.
Well, yeah. I mean,
no, I'm from New Jersey, so we don't hold it against you.
No, I know, but it's such an extended sort of journey. I spent age 1 through 11 in New Jersey, and then we moved out to suburban Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And then spent till I was 18, and the month after I turned 18, I went out to Los Angeles.
Well, that's interesting because you went to USC. I thought you had. I went to NYU Film School because I lived in New Jersey. I'm like, you go to NYU Film School. That's where you go. And you went to USC. That's interesting.
I wanted a buffer.
Yeah,
I wanted a buffer
I hear you.
between me and my parents because I loved my parents and I wanted to continue doing that.
Fair enough. I do think certainly now or even back in the 70s and 80s, there was definitely more professional opportunities, obviously, if you're in USC Film School than you were on the East Coast. It's just,
I guess,
yeah,
that actually wasn't a consideration.
Yeah,
I had learned through various sources that USC is where all the Star Wars people were.
Yeah.
George Lucas and Gary Kurtz and Ben Burtt. I was specifically interested in Ben Burtt because I was fascinated with sound production, and that sort of way in was intriguing to me because when I was in high school, I would do all sorts of productions in my closet studio and bringing in friends to record little dramas and things like that. And that was something that excited me and let me be creative within my means.
Mm-hmm.
I could afford to buy a little cassette machine and get a used reel-to-reel machine and a little Radio Shack mixer and sort of do all that stuff sort of semi-professionally and get some sound out of it. And I was very intrigued by the work that Ben Burt had done, specifically from the NPR Star Wars radio shows.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really the main hook that got me into knowing about USC and wanting to sort of go out to the coast and see how I fit in with that kind of thing.
Cool.
It's interesting. We all have very similar. I went to recording school, and I worked as a recording engineer before I got into video and television.
Yeah.
That was my thing, was sound and sound design.
Because in high school, I worked for the community municipal band, and I did all their recordings. And I set up, this huge Crown reel-to-reel tape recorder and set up really expensive microphones with a cross pattern to record the sounds of the band. And I learned so much from that to try and get, capture live sound, and that just sort of fueled that interest.
Yeah, I was a sound engineer and editor on the King Biscuit Flour Hour. If you remember that radio show back in the day, that was just before I got into television.
Nice.
What was your first gig then out of film school in the movies?
Well, I dropped out of film school because I ran out of money. And I had applied to the film school itself for 5 times and gotten denied 5 times. Because, number one, I wasn't related to anybody in the industry.
Ouch.
And second, because I didn't realize that you don't get in until your junior year. If you don't get in as a freshman, you don't get in until your junior year. And I didn't know that at the time. So I gave up after 5 because I was just out of money. And my Pell Grant had gone away, and there just wasn't, I didn't have any other options. But the first gig I had was working for a guy named Kevin Pike, who did the floor effects on Back to the Future. And he had, done all the mechanical and electronic stuff in the DeLorean, and he had worked as his first main gig on Jaws. And he was, we met him in a class at USC that focused on Back to the Future, and they brought in all the sort of department heads from the film to talk about what they did. And I met Kevin on that, and through my friend Van Ling, who I met in that class as well, we got to work on some stuff that Kevin Pike was working on, and we worked in his shop and built stuff, and I built a model of a SST plane and various other things that was just a mere start at trying to do quote unquote paid work. And I also worked for a month or so for a writer-director, sort of entering stuff into his computer. And my first actual job with a quote-unquote real director was working for Jim Cameron, entering his file effects info into his computer.
Oh, my God.
Into a database, working at his house every day, just sort of typing in stuff.
Does he have the Hero pulse rifle? Because that's speculated.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
And I held it.
Oh, my God. The one that was based on a real Thompson? Or
Oh, yeah.
See?
No, built by Baptiste in England.
Yeah.
And it was...
Because this is after Aliens, right?
This was right after Aliens. This was like maybe 6 months after Aliens.
Who was talking about that? Oh, no, the Stuff
guys
Dreams Are Made Of. It was like,
podcast,
we don't know who has that hero.
No, Jim had it in a drawer. He had it in a flat file. He opened it up and he said, hey.
Do you have keys to that house still?
That house doesn't exist anymore.
Why wouldn't he have the Hero Pulse rifle?
Yeah.
I know. I mean,
come on.
But,
He had a Hero Pulse rifle, and he had a bunch of paintball guns that we went out into his backyard and shot up his pool one day. When he's not directing, he's a really cool guy to hang out with. When he's directing, slightly different.
Yeah.
I remember when people working on T2 wore T-shirts that said T3 not with me. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely true.
So you did stuff entering what is Filofax? You said.
Yeah, well, all his addresses and contacts into what do they call it? Hypercard. Into a hypercard stack with all his contacts, and on his little Mac.
So you had access to his full Rolodex.
I did.
Oh, wow.
But when you're starting out, you'll do anything just to get access, right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
Of course.
Yeah, and I had gotten to know him through my friend Van, who became his research assistant, and Jim just needed other help with this specific thing, and so I volunteered. We volunteered. And it was great. I got to hang out in his house. Bill Paxton came over one day, and we had pizza in the kitchen, and it was really amazing.
That's really awesome.
Amazing.
So did Jim hire you onto the Abyss, or was it a coincidence you got hired on?
It wasn't a coincidence. Jim didn't directly hire me onto the Abyss, but Van recommended me because they needed someone to build study models in the art department. The art department at that time was at Fox in L.A. In a nondescript office right across from accounts receivable at Fox, and we were in full stealth mode. We weren't supposed to talk about what we were doing. We weren't supposed to identify us as a production because we were basically working under the table. And so I worked in those offices based on Van's recommendation, and Jim knew me from before, and he said, sure. And he said, can you build models? And he said, sure. I hadn't built any professional models ever, and I was just learning to work with hot glue and foam core and all that sort of stuff. And but I learned very quickly, and it was amazing. The first day I go in there, there's Ron Cobb sitting at a drafting table, drawing, and I was in heaven. It was amazing.
So what study models did you build? Is it the...
Well, I built a quarter-inch scale model of the deep core.
Okay. Oh,
wow. Which was, maybe 4-foot round model of the containment vessel at Gaffney that we were going to use. And and built, all the tubes, what did they call it? The living space inside, and the space frame that held it all together, all according to Cobb's blueprints, and trying to match up this architectural plastic pipe and cut individual pieces and glue it together and make it fit for just seeing how this set would fit into the containment vessel.
Maybe how would we shoot this?
Yeah.
And how is this all going to go?
Yeah. And then later we built a 1/2-inch scale, double size of that in South Carolina.
Oh wow!
This is at were they nuclear containment vessels or cooling towers? What
they were? It was an unfinished nuclear power station, and the main tank was called A tank. That was the main containment vessel, and B tank, where we had all the submarine stuff, was in sort of an overspill pool, basically.
Oh. Having worked in nuclear power plants, I think an unfinished one is a much better place to be.
Oh, yeah. There was
you started
never,
to say that, and I was like, did they convince these people that this was safe? Because it would never be safe.
There was never any nuclear material at the site.
Good.
And everything was on the up and up as far as we know.
So was it a plant that was shut? The production was shut down,
it was a plant that was started to be built, and then when the pushback against nuclear energy came,
there was a whole number of those.
There was a hold on it, and it was never finished. And this guy named Earl Owensby, who was a big film magnate in South Carolina, bought the site, and he was going to turn it into like a Bible land theme park. I don't think that ever happened.
You found a much better use for it.
Well, I mean, I think in the long run, I think it served a better destiny than it was planned to.
So you did some drawing on the Abyss too, or?
Well, as it progressed, I was hired as the art department assistant, which is basically the gopher that does all the things that no one else wants to do, like make blueprints and organize the flat files and make sure everything was labeled correctly, and wash the production designer's car when it needed, and just all the things that no one else wanted to do, which was fine because I was working for more money than I had made ever, $250 a week. I mean, come on. That was amazing at the time.
In a job like that, did you get opportunities to spend time on set and in the actual production of it, or was
Absolutely.
it all? So it wasn't just art department work where you never left the art studio.
Well, no, because I would work with the production office all the time, and talking to people, coordinating things, and doing sort of all the connective tissue work between the departments. I would go over to the visual effects model shop and share drawings with them, and I would hang out in visual effects and see what they were up to, and keep all the storyboards up to date and things like that. So
that's great, though, because I think that there are people today that work on movies that never set foot anywhere near production of the actual movie.
No. It's very sad because things have become so compartmentalized now that it's actually very. I mean, they do it for various reasons to sort of keep, I guess, security and make sure that there's no cross-pollination between things. I don't quite know why, but they feel better about keeping people as ill-informed as possible. And, it's been a long time since I've worked on a regular movie because of the way the industry is right now. But the past few ones that I've worked on have all been working from home. So there's a complete disconnect.
Yeah,
right? You're just feeding them stuff and not really getting much feedback from the other people in the department, which has always been more beneficial, at least in my mind.
So do you have an Abyss James Cameron on the set story?
Look, all the stories you've heard are true. When someone isn't doing their job or someone is just not good at it, Jim would blow his top and scream. I don't blame him, because especially in the Abyss, where things could go horribly wrong and someone could either be injured or die, you understand that kind of drastic action against what is seen as incompetency. There wasn't a lot of it around, but I think that the secret with dealing with Jim is, if you're right, stand your ground and explain to him. And he would often back down if he found out that you were correct. He would respect that you're standing up for what you think is correct, and he would say, okay, I can see that. And then he would move on. But yeah, there's lots of stories of particularly actors who sort of were very bristly at that kind of activity, because Jim was not what you would call an actor-friendly director. He would often sort of refer to, I think jokingly, actors as modules to bounce light off of. He's not wrong, but he's definitely not a coddling actor-director.
Hard to argue with the man's success, though.
Well, true, and frankly, I'm mind-boggled at some of it, because I don't see the addiction people have for Titanic. I don't understand it. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I thought it was
you're not a teenage girl.
Well,
okay.
I
had to take that with. I had to take a niece to see that movie.
Yeah,
twice, and when it was when it was out in the theaters new, and the whole audience was full of girls.
Yeah,
and it was
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a whole other market. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And I understand, and it's magical and wonderful, and Leo is still a heartthrob.
But it's not
women
the visual
under 25.
spectacle. It's the it's the tragic romance and all that kind of stuff. And it just we look at it, we're like,
there was room on that piece of wood.
There was totally room on that piece of wood.
It's the buoyancy question.
It's the buoyancy, exactly. So I always think of the old joke where Spielberg, Lucas, and Scorsese get together in heaven, and they see that basically heaven is like a large movie set.
Yes.
But James Cameron is telling everyone what to do. And so Spielberg says, Scorsese, why is James Cameron in charge? He says, oh, that's Jesus. He just thinks he's James Cameron.
I've heard various versions of that, and they're all hilarious. Yeah.
So you progress through different movies and what kind of other mostly art department type stuff?
Yeah, in fact, entirely art department up until, fairly recently. But I had my mentor was the production designer of The Abyss, Les Dilley, who just passed away last weekend.
Oh, that's sad. Sorry.
And he was sort of my connection to work for the next 5 years or so. And I connected with him, and I won his trust by doing what he asked and a little more. Mm-hmm. And I tried to do my best work for him because I respected him. I realized that he was the art director on all these films that inspired me in the past. I mean, Star Wars, Empire, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Superman, for God's sake. He was involved in all of these things. And I was just glad to be on his team and be able to contribute. And I think he realized that at some point, and he would often like to sort of tease me. One day, he asked me to get a book to write down the drawing numbers in, because we would keep a log of all the drawings that were made on the film. And I went out and I got this bound blank book, and I brought it back, and he said, "Well, this is rather grand, isn't it? Is that what you think your position is? A grand position? Is that?" I said, "No, I just think that the art department led by you should get some good quality things in it."
Nice.
Yeah, you're right. That's good. So it was these, sort of little mind games that happen all the time. You're tested as to your attitude and your how you fit in with the group that is being developed, and I liked that environment, and he trusted me, and I got into the union because of him, and I worked on 5 movies with him in a row, and that was just an amazing experience. Yeah.
So let's get to the topic we really want to talk about.
Okay.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yes.
How did you? Okay, so Daren worked on, and I don't want to get the title wrong. Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the director's edition.
Correct.
How did you get that gig? Because this was not just drawing things. This was special effects, supervision.
Visual effects.
Visual effects, supervision.
So, the story of this was back after The Abyss. There were 2 guys that were working in the Lightstorm offices for Jim Cameron, working on the bonus material for the Laserdiscs for Alien and Aliens. And these guys were Mike Matessino and David Fine. And I met them there, and I helped them at the time with some of their work, collating images and graphics and things for Laserdiscs. See, Laserdiscs are giant CDs. CDs were like records, but they're silver and small.
We don't have a young audience. It's okay.
No, and many of us have owned those specific Laserdiscs and the players to play them on.
I still have mine, and I still have a working Laserdisc.
Do you really? Wow, I wish I might.
I'm keeping it in a hermetically sealed box.
I think
for
mine
the time.
Works.
Yeah,
I haven't turned it on in 10 years, so it worked when parked.
Schrodinger's laser disc at this point. Yes.
So I met these guys, and as they progressed and did more projects, I helped them out with them. We did The Last Starfighter bonus material, and had a whole day of interviewing people who worked on Last Starfighter at Nick Castle, the director's house. And we would produce these bonus materials for various titles. And as it turns out, Mike Matessino had worked along these lines for Robert Wise doing the Sound of Music bonus materials.
Oh.
And so he developed a relationship with Robert Wise. And, of course, immediately my mind went to, well, what about Star Trek? When can we do the bonus material for Star Trek the Motion Picture? How would that be? Wouldn't that be great? Why don't you mention it to him? And Dave Fine and I were of the same mind. And eventually, I think this was right after these Star Wars special editions came out, we had known that the original release of Star Trek the Motion Picture was down to the wire, and they had to release something by December 7th, 1979, or the theater owners would sue the studio. And it's a famous quote from, I think, either Michael Eisner or Charlie Bluhdorn, that something called Star Trek the Motion Picture will be in theaters, even if it is filled with blank leader. So that was the edict, and they, Robert Wise knew that this was an impossible deadline, so he made some tough decisions. He had to cut in the original visual effects shots that were just being delivered at the last moment. He had to cut them in directly into the blank leader that was spaced out for the length of the shots, and he just dropped them in and left them there. There was no time for any fine cut. There was no time for any previews. There was no time for anything. There was barely time for a sound mix.
So they were composing music to blank leader.
Absolutely, yeah. And they were recording music, I think, a week and a half before the movie opened. So it was down to the last freaking minute, and all the visual effects people were pulling their hair out. And Doug Trumbull famously had a nervous breakdown, and Robert Wise nearly did as well, delivering this movie in whatever state it was to theaters.
He came up as an editor, so it must have just killed him.
Oh, absolutely.
To chop this movie up.
Absolutely,
to get it out.
And he was so distraught by this experience and saddened by the fact that he had no control over it, basically, after that schedule was done, that he wrote it off. For 18 years, he wouldn't even talk about it.
And you send your friends in there to go talk to him about Star Trek.
And and we did. We set up a meeting with him, and we said, how would it be if we could give you those 2 or 3 months of post-production time to finish the movie the way you wanted to? And he thought about it. And I had done some, quick Photoshop images of, the end V'ger chamber sequence as it was envisioned in their original storyboards, which we had access to, and showed him what we could probably do. And then we took him to a screening of the movie at the Directors Guild. And he thought about it, and he said, you know what? I think we can do something with this. And this was in, 1998 or 9.
Had he not seen it up to that point?
He had not seen it since it came out, since he delivered the wet prints to the Washington, D.C. premiere.
I bet it was in his head worse than it actually was.
I think it was.
Yeah. I
think it was. Because we began saying, you can give this a fine cut. We have basically a 20-year preview of it.
Yeah.
And, we can help make this happen. And so he sent a letter to Sherry Lansing at Paramount and said, I'd like to do this. I'd like to go back and revisit Star Trek, and these guys want to help out. And so they eventually said, okay, home video, go. And that's how that started. And, basically, the three of us took various positions based on our experience. And Mike Mattasino handled the editing. Dave handled the scheduling and technology to help make the whole thing work. And I thought of my friends at Foundation Imaging, who had done all this stuff for Babylon 5, and at that time Voyager, that I think we could bring them in to do the additional visual effects shots that we needed. So I became the supervisor, and that's how that came together. It came together pretty fast after we got the okay. But that was a tense few months of trying to figure out, can we do this? Can we do it for a budget? And can we actually make it happen?
So did you build any models, or was it all done in computer?
It was all done on the computer.
All done on computer.
Yeah, because we couldn't afford
NTSC resolution.
At NTSC resolution. Yeah. The models that we were building in CG, though, we were trying to do our best to build them to high enough resolution that we could do it in HD at the time. We tried to get the studio to agree to doing it in HD. Thank goodness they said no.
Because it would have been
it would have been
HD,
it would have been 80s HD or 90s HD, okay. and it would have been less than stellar, let's say, less than stellar cartography, and I think that we were given that opportunity as a proof of concept that this could work as a new cut with new connecting tissue of visual effects. And that it worked narratively for an audience.
So we all know now you got to go through it a second time to make it
22 years later.
So that came out. What year was the first director's cut?
The first one was 2001. It came out in November of 2001, 2 months after the Twin Towers fell.
Oh, jeez.
Now, did you have access to the original negatives at that time, or did you just have a 1-inch videotape access or something like that?
At that time, we had access to a high-definition transfer that we bounced to Betacam, and that was our 720p or 720.
720 interlace.
720 interlace.
Interlace, yeah.
And it was. It was fine for the time, and we had Richard Klein come in and help with the color grade of that print and the transfer. So it looked fine for NTSC.
Yeah, to go on a DVD, it was fine. Yeah.
So how does it come around from that project to the most recent version in 4K?
Constant pestering by Dave Fine to the studio. Every 2 years or so, we would say, hey guys, you want to do this yet? No. And we came close a couple of times that they had some, form of division at the studio that would take charge of this. And there were some other people at the studio that wanted to do this without us. And all sorts of intermachinations of politics, and
Bob Wise is gone by this time.
Robert Wise had passed on, and so we didn't have the 800-pound gorilla on our side anymore. We just had the fact that we had worked with him to bolster our position, and it came very close a couple of times over that 22 years, but finally, with the advent of Paramount Plus and its ability to pay for it, to have exclusive rights to it for a certain amount of time, that it happened. And that came down in 2021.
So you had to go back and redo everything you did.
Yeah.
With the negatives, scans of the negatives instead.
Well, even more, because we got the direct scan of the negative with no color correction. We got the actual negatives that we worked with on the computer. This wasn't a transfer to tape. This was a direct scan at full 4K, and for the 65 and VistaVision, 6 and 8K transfers to put together all the elements we could find. The great people at the Paramount Archives, the film archives, went into all the salt mines across the country that all these things were hidden in, and they brought out everything that they could find for Star Trek the Motion Picture. And they found a bunch of original 65 millimeter elements from Trumbull's group and VistaVision elements from Dijkstra's group. And there's still a bunch of stuff missing that we think maybe was filed with Star Trek The Next Generation, because they used a bunch of those elements for their episodes. So we think they might have gone there, but they did an amazing job unearthing this, all from the urging of Doug Trumbull, who I talked to on the phone but as this process was sort of evolving. And he said, make sure they look in all these places, and he gave me a list of places that they had hidden this stuff away. And he was such a cheerleader for this project. He wanted it to happen so badly. And he died the day that we delivered.
Oh, shame.
But, his spirit was with us the whole time. And he was an important force in encouragement to get this thing done.
So you were stitching together all the elements for the special effects again, not from a transfer from the film. You had the matte pass and the light pass.
We had all the individual. We had all the individual passes that they did on a bunch of sections of the movie. Specifically, we found the most stuff from the opening, the dry dock sequence.
That must have been a pinch me moment.
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. And the sad part is we didn't have all of the elements. And if you don't have all the elements for a shot, you can't do the shot. There's no recreating
no way
stuff.
You can recreate it out of the color version.
We had a couple of shots showing Kirk and Scotty from behind with the model footage in front of them, and they were shot on blue screen. And we just didn't have the element of Kirk and Scotty clean. So we had these pristine views of the Enterprise from that shot, but we couldn't use it, and we had to use the one that had the dirty composite of Kirk and Scotty with the slightly blurry view of the model in the background.
Today you could go in and you could motion capture that and put the blue screen back in, right?
Well, not at the budget we were working at.
But it sounds like the first one that you did was more cleanup than anything. It sounds like this one you had everything you needed to really tighten the movie up.
The DVD version was a lot of cleanup of the videotape film. And it was basically working around not having elements and, doing frame by frame cleanup of some shots and dust removal and garbage mat removal and all sorts of...
And digging out shots that didn't exist in the original version and putting them in.
Some of it. Most of those shots came from the, quote, special longer version.
The TV version.
The TV version. And we had a good transfer of those elements to include with the final cut. And a lot of those things went back in the film because, now that we had the leeway of editing into the visual effects shots in certain sequences, we could free up the time to add back in these character moments. And that specifically happened to the, Spock's whole transformation, his whole journey, which Leonard Nimoy was particularly annoyed when he saw the Washington, D.C. screening. He was annoyed that a lot of that was gone. His whole crying sequence was gone from the film, and he was pissed off. And that's why he was so bad-mouthing the film during the first run. He said, well, we didn't... I wasn't very satisfied with the entire outcome of the film. It wasn't fulfilling for me. And
I want you to kill me in the next one.
Yeah, it's a very good Nimoy impression, by the way.
That was really good. Could you just say "live long and prosper" for it?
For $25. No, I've worked on my Nimoy for quite a long time, probably since I was maybe 6 years old, and the Nimoy from the television series is different, and of course the Nimoy later is much older, and he's talking around his laminated teeth that he bought from the first payments from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Yeah. But no, he was the biggest naysayer about the movie when it first came out, and soon all the other actors began to mimic,
parroted him,
his outlook toward it, and that's the thing that gave it its bad vibe. That spread throughout entire fandom. Oh, it's boring. It's Star Trek: The Motionless Picture. It isn't. It's not based on the characters. It's all special effects. Well, they're not wrong, but there's reasons for that, and because they were forced into that, and they couldn't have a movie that ran longer than 2 hours and something, right? And so they had to cut out all these important things to the things that they paid the most money for. That's right. The visual effects.
Can't cut the effects. That's what all the money is. Yep. Yeah. Do you have a Robert Wise story going back from the NTSC edit?
The thing that I remember most about Robert Wise was that he was very serious, but he still had a sparkle in his eyes. That when he saw something that was working, he sort of smiled and laughed a bit and said, that kind of works, doesn't it? And he when we had our premiere at the Paramount Theater on the lot for the DVD, he had a look in his eye that was so full of relief and gratitude that this thing that had been this tremendous weight on him for, at that time, 20 years, had been lifted, and he said this was the only one that had got away from him. And he finally got closure on this movie, and that was just so great to see, and you could see his smile at that premiere was just amazing.
So you've got to tell the Orson Welles story of the trailer.
When Orson Welles was brought in by the guy who was in charge of creating trailers and print material and such. He was hired to record the voiceovers for the trailer and the television commercials. And during the recording session, we have to remember that Robert Wise was an editor on Citizen Kane. And he was also an editor on the next film, The Magnificent Ambersons, that Orson Welles went off to South America on a diplomatic mission to bump up America's trust and interest in South America to keep South America from going Nazi, basically, during the early 40s. And so Orson Welles was doing this series of documentary and semi-narrative films down in South America, and he was trying to balance this with finishing up The Magnificent Ambersons. He couldn't do it. So the studio had to go forward and finish The Magnificent Ambersons, and the guy that was put in charge of finishing it was Robert Wise. And there were things that just didn't work, things that didn't cut together, and Orson wasn't around to finish it. And so Robert Wise said at the time, we had to make some terrible decisions, and we had to release something that would work for an audience. And of course, as a lot of people know, they changed the ending around. They shot a whole new sequence that sort of wrapped things up that didn't really follow the plan that Orson had for this film.
It neither feels like an Orson Welles film or a Robert Wise film.
Yeah,
it falls in you can see elements of both. I studied that in a film class.
Yeah.
You can see elements of both, but you could see where neither man could be fully happy with it.
No, it falls into, we got to finish this thing. Yeah. Do what you can.
Yeah.
And no one was happy with it, and least of all Orson Welles. So cut to 40 years later, and Orson Welles is forced to say, a Gene Roddenberry production of a Robert Wise film, and he couldn't spit out Robert Wise without venom. And I think it's just luck that they were able to get him to finally say it without the disgust coming through, because Orson, to his dying day, hated what Robert Wise did. And I think that's a very sad thing, because Robert Wise was a very sort of gentle and creative person. And, Orson...
I don't think Orson was a very forgiving person from what I've seen of him historically.
No. But, I think he made his bed himself. And there were a lot of factors that were against him, but he created a lot of those as well.
My film professor used that as his example of studio intervention.
Yeah, but the studio had to intervene because they spent so much money on this movie, and they needed to release something.
But when you hire on a tour, and then it becomes, it's...
Yeah, but, RKO at the time, they realized they made a mistake by bringing Orson out and hiring, I think after Kane, their letterhead said quality instead of talent. It's something like that. That it was a direct jab at Welles, because Citizen Kane didn't do all that well. Certainly, there was a lot of problem with the newspapers at the time.
Yes, it was orchestrated pushback on it.
Yeah. So that's a whole fascinating story of all that stuff that happened. But Orson himself said that he started at the top and worked his way down.
Pretty accurate.
I think that's absolutely accurate, and he realized it. And certainly at the end, he had enough perspective on it. But this was still in 1979. This was 6 years before he died in '85. So it's it's a fascinating story, but his voice was still amazing, and hearing his raw take on the trailer is truly amazing. And I love listening. We got the separate vocal track of it, and I just listened to it over and over again.
So tell them about the tag. Rated PG-13, not for children under 13 without their parents. Right? Didn't they trick him into saying that part because he didn't want to say that part?
No, because it was rated G.
Rated G.
The movie was rated G.
I must be thinking of a different movie.
Yeah, I think that might be Conan.
Conan. Oh, okay.
That might be. He did the trailer for Conan too, and I think I can't say all of that. I can't say all of that in the time you're giving me. How am I expected to say all of that?
And then the tech went, say what?
Yeah, yeah. And so they tricked him into saying bits and pieces, and they edited it together.
Yeah.
But just hearing the story of that recording session and how Welles was really pissed off is fascinating.
Well, it's interesting bookends because he's mad because someone cut his movie not the way he wanted, and he was doing the voiceover for our movie. Somebody else's movie had been cut the way he didn't want it cut. Yeah.
Another studio trying to finish the damn movie.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Well, there's a lot of that through history, but I mean, in some cases it still happens, and in some cases, like we just heard about with the new Avengers movies, they a year out decided, all right, let's just push the movie out because we know we need more time. Yeah. That doesn't happen on a lot of movies, though.
No, and they couldn't do that on Star Trek because they had already signed a contract with the exhibitors, and the exhibitors would sue. Absolutely. And Paramount would have been eliminated.
Which, when you think about it, it makes sense from a business point of view. But if you're getting something, but that thing you're getting isn't good enough, then the exhibitors don't really benefit either.
You got to remember that the exhibitors have already paid for this movie to come out, so the money's in Paramount's hands, and they don't deliver.
That's why I like to call them exhibitionists.
What are you doing now? You're doing a lot of podcasting, and what else?
Well, my full-time job is working for the Roddenberry Archive, which is a privately held group that is funded by the Roddenberry estate through Rod Roddenberry, his son. And we are in the process over the past few years of creating pretty much all the assets from all of the Star Trek in existence. All the sets, all the models, all the props, almost everything you can imagine that has been seen in Star Trek, we are recreating in the digital realm.
Oh,
wow. The future look to its evolution is using technology that doesn't exist yet. We're building this for the eventual occurrence of a holodeck, so that people can walk through these sets, pick up these objects, spin the models around and look at them, and we're working toward that. That doesn't exist yet. So right now we have a website where you can go and move your avatar around and look at things. And there's a better version of that on the Apple Vision Pro that you can see it in stereo and walk around and look at all these things. And I am what's called the Archive's production designer, so I'm in charge of all the artists that are building and finishing these assets, we call them. It's a very cold word for them because it's all the things that we played with as kids and imagined being on. And we're slowly moving through every facet of Star Trek, both ancient and modern.
Wow. That's cool.
It was amazing. I don't know if it was last year or the year before now, but when that 3-foot model of the Enterprise got found and was returned back to the Roddenberry family?
Absolutely. That's still undergoing some legal issues that I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it right now. But we were able to take a bunch of us got to go to the auction house that had it, and we were able to look at it and see it in person. And man, prop collectors will often say that something smells right. This smelled right. It was it.
And it was found in a storage unit.
Storage
right?
department? Storage department?
Yeah.
We still don't know the full story behind that because there's some skullduggery going on that doesn't make sense. They said they found it like the week before and then put it up on eBay for a second until they were asked to take it down.
Right.
But a photo of it in storage had emerged 6 months before this happened.
Oh, interesting.
I remember you told me they think they found it. And I'm like, oh, come on. It's the long
been missing
lost thing.
Forever.
Yeah, it's been missing since 1978.
Rod Roddenberry played with it in the pool.
Yeah,
and it's
no,
destroyed.
all false. Yeah. All false. And Rod was very happy to say that, you see, I didn't break it in the pool. But no, it was fascinating to see it in person because it is it. Yeah. And unfortunately, someone had tried to clean it and had destroyed a little bit of the...
like with Windex and a rag.
Yeah.
Clean it, yeah.
That's what you do with a 50-year-old model, isn't it?
Scrub it. That's a little steel wool. That'll get it off. So, it is in need of some serious TLC and restoration to come back to its former state. But, yeah, it was an amazing day to see that in person. And, I hope it it will become available for people to see in person as well, because it's fabulous.
And you worked also with the guys that did the CG-generated Kirk Spock goodbye film.
Well, yeah, that is Otoy as well. That is through the Roddenberry Archive. Okay. That is sort of a side thing that we do, these vignettes, as we've been calling them. And there has been like a secondary crew working on this. And Otoy, the company that owns the archives, is known for their technology. They make what's called the octane render, which is a standard for a lot of visual effects companies to render out CG images. And they also own it's just called Render, which is an online rendering software that helps large images be more easily generated. And so through this second crew, which they have a director and they have technicians working on the technology of what they call digital, what's the word they use for it? It's digital prosthetics that they can basically map a model of an actor's face onto another actor, or the same actor, depending on who it is. And the technology is really amazing. It can be done live on set with no motion tracking marks. It is extremely sophisticated.
So you're seeing it in the video village.
You're seeing it live.
Yeah, that's what we saw from that unification thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. And unification it came out last year. And truly amazing use of technology and storytelling to give sort of the final meeting of Kirk and Spock. And it's extremely emotional if you carry with you the baggage of all these years of Star Trek. We premiered it on the bridge of the Ticonderoga Enterprise and showed it to William Shatner while he was sitting in the captain's chair on the main viewing screen. And it was one of the most amazing mornings I've ever had. He didn't quite know what to believe about it, because I think at first when he agreed to all this and he signed off on it, I think he thought it was an animated show. I think he thought it was going to be an animated
computer graphics,
Yeah. But he had no expectation that it would actually be younger him in the show.
And look real.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no uncanny valley. It looks exactly like him.
Encountering multiple hymns.
Yes.
I mean, and that's the part that got me, it was very well done, almost like 2001 elements in there.
Yes.
There's the surrealness to it, but just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's an amazing tribute.
It's astounding. And I like it specifically because it has no dialogue.
Yes.
It's told completely visually, and it's mysterious. It does have that 2001 dream state feel. And it's really well done, and I'm impressed by the technical aspects, but I'm also impressed by the storytelling of it, because it's very emotional, and I think it's just amazing. And Jules Urbach, who runs the company, he came up with the story, he came up with the plan, and I think it's amazing.
That's awesome. Tell us where people can find you, where to listen to you, and all that good stuff.
Well, I do several podcasts, one with the group of Inglorious Trexperts, myself, Mark Altman, and Ashley Edward Miller, and we have an episode up every week for the past nearly 8 years.
It's a grind, isn't it?
A bit. A bit, but...
we wouldn't know.
No. But we still, we love it, and we love talking about Star Trek. We thought we would run out of stuff to talk about after 5 years. It hasn't happened yet for some reason. We might have gone over some things a few times, but that's neither here nor there, because we always come up with something different every time. So the Inglorious Trexperts is available wherever you listen to podcasts. We also have a Star Trek adjacent podcast called Deck 78, Yes, based on the famous scene in Star Trek V, where they blast up 78 decks on the Enterprise, even after I explained to Bill Shatner that the decks on the Enterprise start with 1 at the top and go to how many ever there are at the bottom. And he said, "Why weren't you there? Why didn't you tell me at the time?" I said, "I wasn't around, Bill. I'm sorry." So that's Deck 78. We talk about Star Trek adjacent things like we're going to have our interview with Lou Ferrigno that we did last weekend at GalaxyCon Oklahoma City. And that was amazing. Lou Ferrigno is an amazing person and a big Star Trek fan, as it turns out. We talk about a whole bunch of other things, not Trek related. And our third podcast is called The 4:30 Movie, where we have 4 people, Mark, Ashley, myself, and Steve Melching, who is a writer on a lot of the Star Wars animated shows. And we have a theme week based on the old 4:30 movie that showed in New York, and I think also San Francisco and Chicago on ABC, that they would have a theme week of movies that they would show from Monday through Friday, like Planet of the Apes Week or Monster Week or Old English Week, what have you. And we come up with theme weeks that each of us come up with a movie that we would show during a certain day.
That's awesome.
And it's fun. It's a little more in depth than a lot of things that we talk about, but it's fun. And lastly, I do another podcast with my friend Kirk Thatcher. You may know him as the punk on the bus from Star Trek.
Sure, yes.
Star Trek 4.
He was also associate producer of Star Trek 4 and Leonard Nimoy's assistant. He also worked with Jim Henson, and
he worked at ILM.
And he wored at ILM from when
recently
he was,
appeared in a Marvel made-for-TV film.
That's correct. And he's a master of all trades, and he's a lot of fun to hang out with. And as soon as we can get back to recording, we will have more of those. But I
name the show. You didn't name the show.
I'm going to name the show. And we are called the Weirded Beardos, because he has a fabulous beard, and he's going full pirate. I'm just saying that, and it's a lot of fun. We talk about what it's like to be slightly older white guys who used to work in the entertainment industry and are a little bit miffed about it now.
A little bit, little, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of anger, but there is some. I'll be honest.
I call it that. Thank God I didn't go to the business show.
Yeah. No, it's totally like that. And I used to teach at Art Center in Pasadena, and I would tell my students, if you can do anything else, don't go into the movie business, because the jobs are drying out, the industry is drying out, and you don't want to be in this. It's a nowhere road. Go work on games.
Games. Yeah.
It is a shame, but I think that you almost need that advice to really get down to the people who have to do it.
No, absolutely. That's absolutely true. The best way to get someone really good at something is tell them they shouldn't. And if they have any gumption inside them at all, they will fight you. And that's where greatness comes.
Perfect. Perfect ending, like you
way
said.
To end the interview.
All right. Thank you, Daren. It was super interesting, dude. I would love to him on again and do different stuff, talk about different stuff.
His Nimoy is outstanding. It's better than his Shatner, and his Shatner's pretty good.
Oh, that's funny. Cool.
When he does the tours at Ticonderoga, or when Shatner does his tour at Ticonderoga, Daren is his wingman through every tour, and it's great to see the two of them bounce off each other. They're really great together.
The depth of his nerd knowledge is very vast. Like every single topic that came up, regardless of what we were talking about, he had a deep anecdote and a quote, and he seems like he's got a photographic memory for this kind of stuff.
And phonographic memory. So
maybe.
So, super interesting dude. Thank you for introducing us to him, bro.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
Next week, something different. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
All right, we're rolling.
Why don't you introduce him, and then we'll ask some questions.
Oh, okay. We're joined today by Daren Dochterman.
Wait, Dochterman?
Dochterman? Is that
Who's
Dochterman?
Daren Dochterman?
Is that Dochterman?
Dochterman.
Dochterman.
We were just talking about the proper pronunciation.
Yeah.
I tried to look you up, and I got both your names wrong.
We'll just edit it. It's fine.
I spelled both your names wrong.
No, it happens to me all the time.
I can
no
imagine.
one can spell both of my names correctly.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, they can't pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
It's Daren Dochterman.
Oh, yes, of course.
I'm just saying there's 4 of us, and the one person who got the name wrong is the guy that knows him. So I feel good about that.
It's okay. I'm used to it all my life, and it's just something that I'm resigned to accept.
Daren, you want to start over again?
Yeah.
That was fun.
We can keep it, but how about we'll use that as a blooper?
Oh, yeah, we'll put it at the end. Right. Okay, so joining us today is Daren Dochterman.
Oh, my God. Take 3.
Take 3.
Take 3.